super excited. So today I interviewed 5 developers, not for the dirtiest secrets you could ever find in video games or anything quite like that. No, instead, the goal with this series is to remind viewers that developers are gamers too, and that games that are now inspiring new generations to become game developers were once inspired gamers themselves. Now, I asked these developers 4 questions that are going to be spread across 4 separate videos, but to really kick things off about the whole idea about inspiration and where it comes from, I'm going to start off with a question that directly addresses the heart of this topic, which is, what inspired you to become a game developer? Was it a particular video game? And the way that I'm going to set up the order here is I'm going to go from each game and when they became hits. So the earliest video game hit will be first, and the most recent video game hit will be last. Which means that the earliest hit that we have to start with is Donkey Kong Country. And the next one up would also be Banjo Kazooie, the developers responsible for both being a programmer for them. And if you recognize those 2 games, you might recognize the company that he was with. It was Rareware, a company that once worked very closely with Nintendo and now works with Microsoft, but these days you'll find him working over at Playtonic Games. His name is Chris Sutherland. So again, the question is, what inspired you to become a game developer? Was it a particular game?
Back in the 1980s, I was at school and I was playing a whole bunch of different arcade games, not at school I should add, in my spare time. So things like Double Dragon, Paperboy, whatever the latest thing that would come out in our arcade be, and then came the ZX Spectrum, and I got one of those. That was great. I was starting to play a load of different games on those. So I think games I was playing on the ZX Spectrum at the time, things like Jetpack, they were the things that kind of encouraged me and made me think, this is something I want to do, this is something I want to try. And that's what led me into a career in video games. And at the time, I remember speaking to a career advisor, and they said to me, well, you know, you don't want to go into video games because that isn't an industry. And back then it really wasn't much of an industry at all. Certainly it wasn't anything that anybody really had heard of. And so I actually ended up going to university to do computer science degree because I felt, based on that and other things I'd read and other articles, I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, after a number of years doing proper computing, then I won't be interested in doing video games anymore. And yet 4 years later, the opposite was actually the case. And so I actually then applied to Rare, and that's where I started.
Okay, so if that was the earliest, the next one down the list would be the director of Twisted Metal as well as God of War, the original trilogy. He was also a designer on those games. He was also a writer on God of War. It's none other than David Jaffe. Now, you might be wondering why there's red makeup all over David's face. Well, he offered his own explanation, so I'm going to give that to you here now.
I can't even explain the face thing. I was doing a stream, and it's just dumb. I'm an idiot. Welcome to the answers to these questions. I'm an idiot. It's not real blood. Maybe.
I'm still just as confused as all of you, obviously, but with that in mind, here's his answer to the question, what inspired you to become a game developer?
I started off wanting to be a movie maker. I came out to LA. I came out to go to USC, which I did, but I didn't get into their film school, but I made a bunch of films. They were terrible. But while I was waiting for my big break, whatever that meant, I got a job as a tester at Sony in Santa Monica. And it became clear very quickly that this was a big studio filled with fun, creative toys to play with that I could use to leapfrog having to go through, getting good at making movies. And anybody at that time who just expressed a modicum of talent and ambition to sort of advance the art form of video games was like, oh, you're a unicorn, right? And so I had so many opportunities that I was able to create for myself and my teams because at the time that was a relatively unique position. So I was able to sort of pour in a lot of that passion for wanting to create worlds and stories and characters and intellectual properties into video games almost right away. Whereas in film, I probably, because I was never good at it, even if I was good at it, it probably would have taken a lot longer, and I wouldn't have had near as much creative freedom. So that's kind of sort of fell into it, and then I realized, hey, I can get what I'm going after in this medium a lot quicker and with a lot more freedom.
Let's move up another generation of consoles and talk about something that got its start on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I'm talking about Borderlands. Now we got the senior programmer for all 3 games that have come out so far. We got Kyle Pittman, who is actually an early fan of this channel that was on the Borderlands episode, A Boundary Break, which I'm really appreciative of his time then, and I'm really appreciative of his time now. So Kyle, what's your answer for this one?
So I've been playing video games my whole life, and I've always had a creative personality. Anytime I experience anything I enjoy, I always want to try my hand at making that thing. But from a very early age, video games always stood out to me as the coolest thing I could imagine, and the thing I most wanted to dedicate my life to. I remember going to the arcade when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. A bunch of games there I loved. Gauntlet 2, our whole family could play that one. That was cool. Crossbow, that was a light gun game. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but I loved Crossbow. But the one game that I always really remember being so hyped to play when we would go to the arcade was Super Mario Brothers. And what that game did that a lot of other arcade games weren't really doing at the time was it committed to a sense of tangible physicality in the way Mario moves and in the way the world reacts to him. So there's a sense of heft and weight as Mario ramps up to full running speed. When he jumps and hits a block, the block will bounce, it will react, but if you're Super Mario, then the block will shatter. And you can hit question mark blocks, and some of those have coins, but others have mushrooms. And, my 5-year-old brain is seeing that and going, that means the mushroom was already inside the block the whole time. You have to remember it. This was the days of games like Pac-Man, where the pieces of fruit would appear and disappear from the map on a timer. So to have this world that felt crafted and bespoke, where you could trust that, a power-up was always going to be in the same location every time, and the world would react consistently to your inputs as a player, that felt really special. That felt really ahead of its time. So as I got older and started teaching myself to program, first in basic, copying programs from the back of kids' science and technology magazines, and then majoring in computer science, I went to grad school at SMU Guildhall, and that led to an internship and future employment at Gearbox. Across that whole time, I was developing these concepts and these values of things I appreciated both as a gamer and a game developer. And I think you can trace that the excitement that I felt about Super Mario Brothers and that sense of tangible physicality and reactiveness and authenticity in its world all the way to what I do today, where I'm largely focused on game feel, or what we call 3C at Gearbox. That's character camera controls. You can trace that all the way back to the very earliest days of my history as a gamer.
All right, next up is the director of Shovel Knight, Sean Velasco. This game came out during the PlayStation 4 era, but it first released on the Wii U and 3DS and PC. This is a great stepping stone for someone that's a little newer to the scene in terms of a hit game and what their influences are, because it's like a retro-inspired game. So, Sean, if you could, please take it away.
The first game that I really remember seeing and loving was Super Mario Bros. I think I saw it in the video store. I was just blown away with what I saw. I fell in love with the NES and whatever, cleaned out fireplaces and mowed lawns so I could get one at the tender age of, 8 or 10 or however old I was. And so when I finally got it, then all the games that just informed my sensibilities for my whole life, I played them all in that stretch of time. Super Mario Bros, Castlevania, Mega Man 2, Zelda 2. So from there on, I feel like my path was pretty much set. I mean, before I was even blown away by the Super Nintendo and N64 and everything that games had to offer after that. So I discovered that being a game designer was a role from an interview with Shigeru Miyamoto about Super Mario World and the book Mario Mania, which was another Nintendo Power publication. Nintendo Power, once again, doing the good work of spreading information about game development. And so as soon as I found out you could be like a game designer, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make the kinds of games that I loved. And so that's what inspired me to be a developer. Yeah, I mean, that's why we went on to make Shovel Knight, because of all those inspirations. And I think that it draws from all of those in some way, maybe some more directly than others. But I'm just, happy that we got that opportunity, because I've been wanting to make games like that. And I've just been wanting to make games, all sorts of kinds of games ever since I was a kid. Like the ones that I love, and I've just been pursuing that goal doggedly for my entire life, and I just feel so grateful for the opportunity to be able to do so.
And lastly, we have the lead porting engineer for a very popular game right now, Poppys Playtime. His name is Matt Selva, and he'll cap us off by giving us his inspirations as a modern-day game developer.
So I've been playing games all my life. One of my earliest memories is playing Mario Brothers 3 with my family way back when, probably 20 years ago or so now. And it was just an extremely fun experience, and I really enjoy how games can bring families together and bring friends together to work toward common goals. We would sit and use a little like cheat thingy to skip to the last level of Mario Brothers 3 and try to beat the boss, and it was just an extremely fun experience. But I didn't really get into game development until later on in my life. I would actually play games on Roblox with some of my friends, and a lot of those games were very simple at the time. It was back in the early 2010s when Roblox hadn't really gotten as advanced as it is now. And I would play all of those simple games and think that I could do that too. I've been playing games all my life, like I said, and I just decided to dive in one day, and I made a bunch of really bad games, which I think is kind of inevitable for anyone getting into game development. You're going to start with some rough patches, and that's all part of growing. So that's what really got me into game development. There wasn't really a particular gaming experience that did it, but just continuous exposure to games, loving games with my family, loving games with my friends. We would play them all the time, and then when I got into Roblox, I really dug into the development side of things a bit more. I learned a bit about programming, a bit about game design, and then I went to college, and one of my first days at college, I went to study computer science entirely. And then I showed up on campus and realized that game development was also a major that I could study in. So I was like, oh, well, that sounds right up my alley. So I got into game development from there. I made a variety of games throughout college, and now I find myself here. And it's been an incredible journey, but I'm just excited to see where it goes.
And that's all I got for now. I want to give a huge thank you to Mimiyori, who did all the illustrations for this video. She has a video that is popping off right now, which is really exciting for her. I'm so happy. Check it out, please. Video in the description, as well as, of course, all the developers. We got Chris Sutherland with Platonic Games. I got links to his stuff down below. They're publishers now, so they got some new games that you guys might want to check out. Obviously, Gearbox has Borderlands 4 just announced, and the movie came out, so support where you can. And Poppys Playtime is still currently in development. There's plenty of chapters you can check out now. The first one is completely free. And Shovel Knight is just doing a new anniversary that I believe that is come out now, I believe. So you can check out Shovel Knight and get the anniversary edition. And David Jaffe has his own YouTube channel. So all the links to all the different developers and what they got going on is going to be in the video description. If you're new here, I got 4 more of these videos down the pipeline with all these different developers with different questions. So if you're interested in seeing what else they have to share with the general public, I'm excited to share them all with you. So please subscribe so that you can catch those videos in the future. With that, take care.